In listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job.
We've heard this before.
That I can tell you.
Donald Trump continuing to rail against the justice system, Katie.
But this is how democracy works. This is the rule of law. And despite his best efforts to not have it work, it's worked, to your point, Anna. I would say, and Jose knows this, the courtrooms that I grew up in, I'll say in Florida, there's a saying that's on all the walls, and it's, "We who labor here only seek the truth." It doesn't say, "We who labor here only seek the truth for those that can afford it. We who labor here only seek the truth for, the certain ones." I think it's, let's keep it real, right? In any other situation, you have a criminal defendant, sometimes who's just by themselves. He has an entourage of stooges and other lawyers that are there. So to some extent, and maybe this dovetails a little bit what Charles just said, he's in a cocoon. He's in a protected cocoon. He's gone through the judicial system.
Correct.
He's gone through our rule of law institution. But he's protected right now. He's not getting the full effect of what it's like to be a criminal defendant in our judicial system. So I'm just, like I said, keeping it real and being honest. But at the same time, he is facing the same consequences and penalties that any other criminal defendant would be facing. And I think that is an important distinction with a difference that we have to remember. There is still justice. And even if the disposition of this is not what you personally want it to be, it's how it was supposed to happen. And thank gosh for Judge Merchan. Thank gosh we had a judge and a system that made sure that it was, despite what Donald Trump wants to say, which is a lie, it was not a rigged system. This is exactly how the process goes.
I do wonder, Danny, whether who this defendant is. Again, to reiterate, a former president, current candidate to be president, how that factors into the deliberations. It's got to be on the juror's mind.
It always factors in an intangible way whenever you have a famous or infamous defendant, and more so with arguably the most famous or infamous defendant in American history.
But this could influence this country. It's not just a famous or infamous person who's an actor, let's just say. This is a potential future president and already former president.
And by the way, that goes to Exhibit A in the case of whether Todd Blanche's reference to Donald Trump maybe going to prison was accidental or not accidental. Because when you really think of the effects of that, just that little line might have jurors thinking, even though there was an objection and a correction, a curative instruction, that's going to have jurors thinking about the weight of what happens if you convict not just a former president, but someone who may be president again and very soon. So, yes, that always factors in a way that you can't measure. I can't tell you how jurors weigh it. They certainly won't say it in the jury room. I wouldn't expect them to. Hey, how do we weigh this differently because it's a famous person, because it's Donald Trump, because it's a former president? I don't think they'd say that out loud, but it weighs in all of our subconscious.
But it also has a prejudicial weight in many cases, who the person is, if you, as a juror, have an opinion about the person separate from an opinion about what they have been witnessing in the courtroom as far as evidence and facts.
Exactly. Notoriety cuts both ways, and that's probably never been more true in the case of Donald Trump, who is the most polarizing figure ever in American history. That everybody, I mean, what other defendant can you walk into a courtroom and pretty safely say roughly half the country is a fan, roughly half the country is not a fan? And you have that with Donald Trump. And of course, that was a challenge during jury selection, which, we can't talk enough about how jury selection that I predicted could take weeks upon weeks upon weeks, and I think others were in agreement, went relatively quickly. So there is an ability in this American criminal justice system to find people who are willing to sit on a jury, who may have opinions about somebody, but they're willing to set those opinions aside and sit in judgment. And if you can find a jury for Donald Trump, I think the lesson here is you can find a jury for anybody.
We just saw Donald Trump leave. He finished his remarks, continued to call the trial process rigged, continued to blame President Biden, suggesting he was connected to this particular case, which, of course, he wasn't. No evidence of that. This was a state case, not federal charges.